Begin audio prompt in 3, 2, 1.
Look, there are a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's theories out there. A lot. And even though it wasn't until recently that I actually started understanding and using the acronyms pro-theorists use for them, MoltenMCI was always a theory I was familiar with to some degree. And yet, the more I think about it now that I'm fully familiar with this theory and its points, what most fans and theorists call a theory, an idea, up to speculation, was never just a theory. Cawthon and the studios working on FNAF right now have gone out of their way to tell us that this theory is canon to some extent. But what is MoltenMCI? Why is it so important? And most importantly of all, how is it confirmed, or at least as confirmed as anything in FNAF will ever be? This video is essentially a loose follow-up to my previous one on the I Will Put You Back Together line from FNAF 4, where I bring up MoltenMCI and saw some of you comment on it, and today I want to go more in-depth on the subject. Before we get into this, I do want to say that this video will be using the term canon, and I want to remind all of you that practically nothing in FNAF is canon. Technically, if you think about it, it's not canon that William Afton is the purple guy, or that Michael Afton is the character we play as in Sister Location, when both of these are well-known facts that I hope everyone in the community agrees with. So when I do use the word canon, I use it in the vaguest sense possible, usually meaning something Scott is either strongly hinted at, or maybe sometimes rarely outright confirmed in some way, whether it be directly or indirectly. Confusing, I know, but this is FNAF after all. I'll also be using the FNAF novels, namely The Fourth Closet, for evidence in this video. It's unfair to discredit these books in particular, since Cawthon himself said that even though they're a separate continuity from the games, they're still important to solve the lore. Also, a little thing outside the script here, I'm like really ill, and could barely talk a few days ago, so if my voice annoys you, just turn off the volume. Read the subtitles, I guess. But with that out of the way, get ready, because in today's theory, we're gonna dive deep into some FNAF lore etymology and discuss why MoltenMCI was confirmed from the start. To begin with, what even is MoltenMCI? Well, the name of this theory comes from two common terms in FNAF, Molten from Molten Freddy, and MCI from the Missing Children incident. This theory posits that Molten Freddy from Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator contains some form of the missing children inside his wires. For those of you who don't believe this theory or who are unfamiliar with it, this idea might seem a bit strange. So how can this work, and isn't it a bit bold to assume it's canon? Well, the core part of evidence from MoltenMCI comes from a combination of 4 pieces of FNAF media, 3 games, and a book. The games in question are Five Nights at Freddy's 3, Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location, and Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. In FNAF 3's end-of-night minigames, commonly referred to as Follow Me, we see William Afton disassemble and most likely kidnap the FNAF 1 animatronics, taking them from the abandoned pizzeria he finds them in. He succeeds in taking Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy's endoskeleton parts. When he goes back on night 5, he's cornered by the spirits of his victims. In a desperate bid for control, or safety, he puts on his trademark Spring Bonnie suit, which backfires immensely, killing him and ending the minigames. The story being told in these games might seem simple enough, but trust me, when we get back to them in a bit, things will start getting a bit complicated. The second game, Sister Location, goes deep into the idea of William Afton experimenting with souls and a substance called Remnant, which is sort of a physical form of memory and soul energy. In this game, and in FNAF 6, which we'll get to in a bit, we find out that the scooper Michael Afton dies to is actually a remnant injecting device named the SCUP. Scoop? Forget it. A scalable creation of ulterior presence that Afton used in his experiments with eternal life. It's a trace remnant on the scooper that allows Michael Afton to come back to life after being worn like a onesie by Ennard, proving Afton right about the power of souls and Remnant. Then, in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator or FNAF 6, we saw the new form of Ennard, Molten Freddy, complete with Molten Remnant Goop in it, as the name suggests, and a cryptic backstory that still isn't fully clear. It's here that we got blueprints for the SCUP from earlier, and in the game's files, Molten Freddy himself. Next up, the book. Five Nights at Freddy's The Fourth Closet, the third installment in the FNAF novel trilogy. In it, Afton comes back to life yet again, this time looking like a Muppet-adjacent old man wearing a purple bathrobe, because Scott thought this was peak character design for some reason. Anyway, in this book, Afton unveils his ultimate plan. The missing children's souls in Remnant are under his control since they think he's their friend, Spring Bonnie. For those of you who are unaware, unlike most fan depictions of the MCI victims, the canon ones, both in the books, the movie, and most likely in the games, as we'll see, are convinced that Spring Bonnie's their friend and don't remember what he actually did to them. Continuing, since he's got control over them, Afton schemes to inject the remnant into his new Funtime animatronics, as well as combine the original Freddy's animatronics into one giant remnant goop monster with all the animatronic parts in it. Are you seeing the similarities? However, this plan backfires as the kids realize who he really is with the help of a character called Cawthon and burn him down once and for all, ending the trilogy. No, we will not talk about the Charlie bot stuff. So, how do these 4 pieces of media tie into and help prove MoltenMCI? Well, since we know Afton likely took these still possessed endoskeletons in the Follow Me, it's logical that using what we learned from Sister Location, he'd take them to the bunker to experiment on them, and we know from the 4th closet and Pizza Sim that at some point down the line, near the end of an era, a metal amalgamation is created, with one of them, the novel version, containing the missing children incident victims, and that Afton experimented on his Funtime with robots. And we've got further proof. In Pizza Sim, you can pay Candy Cadet a token for a chance to hear a story. If you're lucky, he'll tell you one of 4 stories. Every single one of these is about 5 things going into one, 5 kittens in one box, 5 kids into one grave, and so on. This matches up perfectly with the 5 MCI kids and how they go into one thing: Molten Freddy. In the files of FNAF 6, there's a blueprint of Molten Freddy that would theoretically be seen in the Insanity ending alongside the Scooper, the Rask, and the Lefty's blueprints. In it, we're told that Molten Freddy contains the 3 other main Funtime animatronics apart from Baby: Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora. The blueprint also states that this particular one of Afton's constructs contains the most remnant ever recorded in anything. So, put a pin in that. I know what you're thinking. If this blueprint is in the files, then we shouldn't use it, right? Well, wrong, because we see the same blueprint in the Ultimate Guide, and if I recall correctly, it's the only Insanity ending blueprint we see in that book. And I'll admit, the guide isn't very trustworthy lore-wise, but if it's there, in that book, authorized by Scott Cawthon, that means it's canon to the franchise in some sense, so, you know. Large amount of remnant, of course, acts as supporting evidence for MoltenMCI. As well as that, and this was a pretty big deal about half a year ago, but almost 5 years after the release of the original Hell Planet game, a player found a furnace containing 4 endoskeletons in one of the Sister Location levels. This might not have seemed like anything special at the time, but it was then that we realized that these endos were Endo 01s, the same model of endos as the FNAF 1 gang, in exactly the same amount as the ones taken by William in the Follow Me minigames. As well as that, them being in a furnace is important since the way William extracts remnants in the books is by heating residue-possessed metal. As well as that, the children in the novels are kept under control by William because they think he's Spring Bonnie. What if the reason Afton came back on Night 5 and Follow Me wasn't because he was after Golden Freddy like we thought, but because he wanted to get his Spring Bonnie suit in an attempt to control the remnants and memories of the children he was experimenting on? So, we've got ourselves a good narrative fitting together of William taking the animatronics from the FNAF 1 pizzeria, melting their remnant out of the endos, and using that remnant for his experiments with the fun times. But how does this remnant end up in Molten Freddy, and why does this matter? Well, as I think most of you already know, all the Funtime animatronics in the Sister Location go into Ennard, and after Circus Baby separates herself from Ennard, all that's left is a mass of wires. It's then that the Funtime Freddy persona takes control, crafts a mass of wires, a new mask made of trash, and goes to Pizza Sim. Afton makes it pretty clear that he never injected Circus Baby with remnant in the 4th closet since she was already possessed by his own daughter. So this logic should carry over to the games, since this novel has so many similarities to Sister Location and FNAF 6. Thus, when Baby becomes her own animatronic again, Molten Freddy is a mask consisting probably almost entirely of the missing children incident victims' remnant. It's important to make the distinction between souls and remnants because while we see the souls corner William and Follow Me, we don't know if they function separately from the remnant William extracted or not. The way I like to think about it is just think of the souls as one whole, and the remnant as a piece of them, their memories, if you will, that William took to experiment on. In Henry's speech, he also specifically tells Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby to let go of their spirits, implying that Molten Freddy also has some kind of spiritual energy in him.
To you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears.
That's great and all, but how does this benefit the lore? Well, first of all, it ties up a big loose end from FNAF 3. FNAF 3 was originally meant to be the end of the franchise, and in its good ending, we see all 5 animatronics with their eyelights out, implying that the souls of the missing children were freed by the player. However, as the series continued, it became unclear if this was actually the case, if any of the good ending stuff actually happened. Well, I think it didn't. You see, as I discussed in my previous video, which you should check out after this one, a soul can only be free if it's one with all of its remnant. So if one part of the MCI's remnant is in Fazbear's Fright and the others in Molten Freddy, it's impossible for them to move on because Molten Freddy never went to Fazbear's Fright. This is why FNAF 6 is so important to free the kids. Henry gathers their remaining remnant in one place and sets it on fire, releasing their souls. This also helps explain what even happened to the MCI after Follow Me, as it seems unlikely that they just hang around at Freddy's without any animatronics to possess. But now, the important bit. Why do I think Scott has been trying to tell us this theory is canon? Well, there's several reasons, but it's quite simple, so let's get into them. First off, the fourth closet and FNAF 6, which both reference some kind of MCI remnant amalgamation, came out less than a year apart from each other, with FNAF 6 coming out in late 2017, and the fourth closet coming out on June 26 of 2018, coincidentally the 33rd anniversary of the missing children incident in universe. Whether this was intentional or not is up to debate, of course, but either way, pretty funny. Anyway, these two adjacent pieces of media releasing so close to each other feels like Scott giving us clues about FNAF 6. After all, another book that came out after Pizza Sim, the Survival Logbook, was filled to the brim with evidence for a specific part of that game, so why should this novel be any different? Each of these 3 novels in the Silver Eyes trilogy is connected to a certain FNAF game or games. FNAF 1 for Silver Eyes, FNAF 4 for the Twisted Ones, and of course, Pizza Sim and Sister Location are grouped together for the fourth closet. And it continues. In fact, every single year, for 5 years straight, we got a piece of evidence from MoltenMCI, a theory that, at least to my knowledge, no one had come up with yet, at least at the point of Pizza Sim. 2015 gave us FNAF 3 and Follow Me, which was a build-up for Sister Location that came out in 2016 and explained Athens' remnant experiments, followed by FNAF 6 in 2017, then the fourth closet in 2018, and Help Wanted in 2019 with the furnaces and 4 endos I brought up earlier. Isn't it a bit suspicious that evidence for a theory consistently popped up in the games and books every year for 5 consecutive years, with each scrap of evidence more obvious than the previous one? Sounds fishy to me. This is one of the reasons why I think MoltenMCI is undeniable. Every year since thinking of Sister Location, Scott has been trying to explain that the MCI kids went into the Sister Location animatronics. This theory isn't just a theory, it's a fact, similar to how I think Shatterbuff as Sister Location theory is also practically confirmed. It was only a couple years ago when someone came up with this theory that Scott could finally stop slapping evidence for MoltenMCI in every FNAF project he put out. So, in conclusion, is MoltenMCI true? In my opinion, yes. Is it canon? Not really. Scott never confirmed MoltenMCI was true. He didn't confirm almost anything in the franchise. Funnily enough, if I recall correctly, the only time Scott ever directly confirmed anything about the lore was after Sister Location's Custom Night and its mysterious final cutscene came out, when he went on record to say that Michael Afton is not Springtrap. Oh, and adult theories, so take from that what you will. What with all the themes of 5 things going into one through Candy Cadet and the symbolism from the fourth closet, MoltenMCI feels like it's meant to be true. It works from an evidence standpoint with all the clues that we've been bringing up thus far, and explains why Henry wanted to seek out Molten Freddy in particular, as stated by his blueprint in FNAF 6, because he had the most amount of remnant collectively in his structure, the missing children's remnant, and that spirit energy needed to be free. And with that, that's my thoughts on MoltenMCI and why I think Scott Cawthon and Steel Wool have been trying to confirm it for the past 7 or 8 years at this point. If you enjoyed this theory, please like, subscribe, and most importantly, comment your opinion. Sorry again for the voice inconvenience, I can't help it, but, yeah, subscribe I guess. I'll see you in the next one, and as always remember, keep on theorizing and never stop overthinking. This has been WitheredCircle, the Midnight Theorist.